This article discusses the group of soldiers who acted as Napoleon Bonaparte's personal guard. For other uses of the term, see Imperial Guard. The Imperial Guard was originally a small group of elite soldiers of the French army under the direct command of Napoleon I, but grew considerably over time. It acted as his bodyguard and tactical reserve, and he was careful of its use in battle. The Guard was divided into the staff, infantry, cavalry, and artillery regiments, as well as battalions of sappers and marines. The Guard itself as a whole distinguished between the experienced veterans and less experienced members by being separated into three sections: the Old Guard, Middle Guard, and Young Guard. History. The Guard had its origin in the Consular Guard, created November 28, 1799, by the union of the Guard of the Directory and the Grenadiers of the Legislature. These formations had for principal purpose the security of the executive and legislative branches of the French Republic, and gathered a small number of soldiers, about 1,000. One may question their utility, as they did not oppose Napoleon's 18-Brumaire coup of 1799. The Consular Guard changed its name to the Imperial Guard on May 18, 1804. Its headquarters were located at the Penmont Abbey in Paris. Napoleon took great care of his guard, particularly the Old Guard. The Grenadiers of the Old Guard were known to complain in the presence of the Emperor, giving them the nickname Les Grognards, the Grumblers. The Guard received better pay, rations, quarters, and equipment, and all Guardsmen ranked one grade higher than all non-Imperial Guard soldiers. Other French soldiers even referred to Napoleon's Imperial Guard as the Immortals. The Guard played a major part in the climax of the Battle of Waterloo. It was thrown into the battle at the last minute to salvage a victory for Napoleon. Completely outnumbered, it faced terrible fire from the British lines, and began to retreat. For the first time in its history, the Middle Guard retreated without orders. At the sight of this, Napoleon's army lost all hope of victory. The Middle Guard broke completely, but the Old Guard battalions held their formation and secured the retreat of the remainder of the French army, before being almost annihilated by British and Prussian artillery fire and cavalry charges. The words «La Garde Morte mais ne se rend pas» is generally attributed to General Pierre Cambronne. It has been suggested that this was in fact said by another general of the Guard, Claude Etienne Michel, during their last stand at the Battle of Waterloo. The retort to a request to surrender may have been «La Garde Morte, elle ne se rend pas». Letters published in the Times in June 1932 record that they may have been said by General Michel. Composition. The Guard was composed of three echelons. The Old Guard comprised some of the finest soldiers in Europe, who had served Napoleon since his earliest campaigns. The Middle Guard was composed of his veterans from the 1805 to 1809 campaigns. The Young Guard consisted of the best of the annual intake of conscripts and volunteers, and was never considered to be of quite the same caliber of the senior guards, although its units were still superior to the normal line regiments. Numbers. In 1804 the Guard numbered 8,000 men. By the time of Napoleon's invasion of Russia in 1812, it had swelled to just under 100,000 men. The Guard had its own artillery, infantry and cavalry components just like a normal army corps. General Staff of the Imperial Guard. Created soon after the creation of the Guard itself, the General Staff by 1806 included the 4 Colonel Generals of the 4 divisions of the Guard, all Marshals of France in field rank. It also included an Inspector of Reviews, a Commissioner of War, 24 aides-de-camp, and other specialist officers, NCOs, and privates. Foot regiments. The Old Guard regiments served in the 3rd Division of the Old Guard, while the rest of the foot regiments of the Guard served in the 1st and 2nd Divisions. 1st Foot Grenadiers Regiment created from the Grenadiers of the Consular Guard. The Foot Grenadiers were one of the oldest and most venerated of regiments in the French army, classed as the Old Guard. 2nd Foot Grenadiers Regiment created in 1806. The 2e Regiment de Grenadiers à pied de la Garde Impériale was disbanded in 1809, then re-raised in 1810. 3rd Foot Grenadiers Regiment. This regiment was created as the Royal Guard in Holland, when Louis Napoleon, brother to Napoleon, was made King of Holland. After Holland became part of France, it became in 1810 the 3e Regiment de Grenadiers à pied de la Garde Impériale, disbanded 15 February 1813. Re-raised on 8 April 1815, in place of the former Fusiliers Grenadiers. Finally disbanded 24 September 1815. 4th Foot Grenadiers Regiment. A 4th Grenadier Regiment, the 4e Regiment de Grenadiers à pied de la Garde Impériale, was raised 9 May 1815. Disbanded 24 September 1815. 1st Foot Chasseur Regiment, created at the same time as the Grenadiers of the Consular Guard. 1e Regiment de Chasseurs à pied de la Garde Impériale was one of the oldest and most venerated of regiments in the French army, classed as the Old Guard. 2nd Foot Chasseur Regiment, created in 1806, the 2e Regiment des Chasseurs à pied de la Garde Impériale was disbanded in 1809, then re-raised in 1811. 3rd Foot Chasseur Regiment. The 3e Regiment des Chasseurs à pied de la Garde Impériale briefly existed during the 100 Days Campaign after Napoleon's escape from Elba. 4th Foot Chasseur Regiment. The 4e Regiment de Chasseurs à pied de la Garde Impériale was also raised during the 100 Days Campaign after Napoleon's escape from Elba. Fusiliers Grenadiers. The Fusiliers Grenadiers were the 2nd Regiment of Fusiliers created on December 15, 1806. From the 1st Battalions of the Grenadier and Chasseur Elites, forming a regiment that was to be 1,800 men strong. Conscripts and men from the Compagnies de Reserve brought the new regiment up to 4 battalions of 4 companies each, 120 men to a company. They were disbanded on May 12, 1814. Fusiliers Chasseurs. The Fusiliers Chasseurs were created on October 19, 1806. From the 1st Battalions of the Velites of the Grenadiers and Chasseurs of the Guard, the regiment was to be 1,200 men strong. Men of the Compagnies de Reserve were added to bring the regiment up to 4 battalions of 4 companies each, 120 men to a company. In 1813 each battalion was enlarged by 2 more companies. They were disbanded on May 12, 1814. Tirailleurs Grenadiers. The 1st regiment to become known as the Young Guard, Tirailleurs Grenadiers, were raised in 1809 from conscripts, but they had to be able to read and write. A 2nd regiment was formed later in the same year. In 1810 both were renamed 1e and 2e Regiments de Tirailleurs de la Garde Impériale. Tirailleurs Chasseurs. 2 regiments of Tirailleurs Chasseurs were formed at the same time as the Tirailleurs Grenadiers, and were also included in the Young Guard. For the 1812 campaign in Russia these were expanded to 6 regiments. Both became 5e and 6e Regiments de Tirailleurs de la Garde Impériale in 1811. During the 1813-14 campaigns the number of Regiments de Tirailleurs de la Garde Impériale was increased to 16, although they rarely equaled the regiments of the Young Guard of 1811. The 7th, 8th and 9th were recruited from the Pupilles de la Garde, child soldiers who were to become Napoleon's son's guard and who stayed in France during the Napoleon's invasion of Russia. Voltigeurs of the Guard, created from the Tirailleurs Chasseurs in 1810. The Regiments de Voltigeurs de la Garde Impériale became one of the largest corps in the Guard, eventually absorbing the Regiments de Conscrits Chasseurs to number 16 regiments by 1814. The 14e Regiment de Voltigeurs de la Garde Impériale was created from the Spanish volunteers that retreated with the French army, and the Regiment de Voltigeurs de la Garde Royale Espagnole. Conscripts Grenadiers, created in 1809, the 2 Conscripts Grenadiers regiments, though intended to provide a reserve for the Young Guard, were not included in the Guard, receiving line infantry pay. The regiments became 3 and 4e Regiment de Tirailleurs de la Garde Impériale in 1810. Conscripts Chasseurs created in 1809, the Conscripts Chasseurs Regiment, though intended to provide a reserve for the young Guard, was not included in the Guard, receiving line infantry pay. After 1811, the Conscripts Chasseurs formed the 3rd and 4th Regiments of the Voltigeurs of the Guard, National Guard Regiment of the Guard. This regiment was created from the National Guard companies of the northern departments of France. The regiment was organized according to the line infantry tables, and in 1813 was renamed the 7th Regiment of Voltigeurs. Flaneur Grenadiers and Chasseurs. In preparation for the invasion of Russia, Napoleon ordered a further creation of units for the Guard that included Regiment de Flanqueurs Grenadiers de la Garde Impériale and Flaneur Chasseurs Regiment. Illustrations of foot regiments by Adolphe de Chesnel. Grenadier, foot chasseur, Fusilier Grenadiers, Marines of the Guard, Tirailleurs Grenadiers, Voltigeurs of the Guard, foot artillery, Sapeurs de la Garde, cavalry regiments. The Imperial Guard cavalry constituted a corps in itself and had its own commander, with seasoned cavalrymen like Marshal Jean-Baptiste Bessières, Frédéric Henry Walther, Etienne Marie-Antoine Championne and Nansouty successively at its helm. Augustin Daniel Belliard was also interim commander for a few days in 1814, before giving command to Horace François Bastien Sébastiani de la Porta, who held it for a short while, until Napoleon's abdication in April 1814. During the 100 Days, there was no overall commander of the Guard cavalry, with command divided between Charles Comte Lefebvre Desnoets and Claude Etienne Guyot. Horse Grenadiers. The Horse Grenadiers was the senior cavalry regiment of the Guard, and originated from the Consular Guard. Classed as heavy cavalry, the regiment did not wear a cuirass, but was known for its distinctive bearskin headdress and black horses. It was known by the nickname of the Gods, also as the Big Heels. Chasseurs à Cheval. The Regiment of Chasseurs à Cheval was also created from the Consular Guard, and ranked second in seniority. Although it was a light cavalry regiment, the regiment was not only known for its lavish uniform, but its combat history, as well. A second regiment was created briefly from Regiment de Clairs Lanciers in 1815. Empress Dragoons. The Dragoon regiments of the line distinguished themselves in the German campaign of 1805, and so Napoleon decided to reorganize the cavalry of the Guard and create within it a regiment of dragoons, made up of 3 squadrons, headed by 60 officers personally selected by Napoleon. The first squadron was to have 296 men, and be made up of Velites, whilst the other 2 were regular squadrons of 476 horsemen. To complete this new unit, each of the 30 dragoon regiments of the line provided 12 men, each of whom had done 10 years of service, and the Brigadier, Chasseur, and Dragoon line regiments provided the sous-officiers. This regiment quickly became known as the Regiment de Dragons de l'Impératrice in tribute to their patroness, Joséphine de Beauharnais, and up until its last member died, the regiment marked the anniversary of her death. The unit's numbers rose to 1269 in 1807 with the addition of 2 new squadrons, and on December 9, 1813, it was attached to the Guard's 3rd Regiment of Éclaireurs. The Dragoons' uniform and weaponry was the same as those of the Guard's mounted Grenadiers, only in green rather than blue, and a copper helmet with a hanging mane in the Neo-Greek Minov style, and a red plume. Éclaireurs. In the Russian campaign of 1812, the French army had suffered badly from attacks by the Russian Cossack cavalry. About to fight on French soil for the first time since the French Revolutionary Wars, Napoleon decided to reorganize the Imperial Guard. In Article 1 of a decree of December 4, 1813, he created 3 regiments of Éclaireurs à Cheval de la Garde Impériale as counterparts to the Cossacks. They were also known as Hussards Éclaireurs within the Guard. They joined the army on January 1, 1814, just in time to participate in the 6 Days Campaign, and were disbanded after Napoleon's first abdication. The 1 Regiment Éclaireurs à Cheval was attached to the Grenadiers à Cheval, and was thus named the Regiment of Éclaireurs Grenadiers. The 2 Regiment Éclaireurs à Cheval was attached to the Dragoons de l'Impératrice. The 3 Regiment Éclaireurs à Cheval was attached to the 1 Regiment of Chevaulegers Lanciers. 1st Regiment of Lancers. The regiment, called the Regiment de Chevaulegers Polonais de la Garde, was created in 1807 after the 1806 defeat of the Allies and the French occupation of Poland. In 1811, with the raising of the Dutch Lancers of the Guard, the regiment was renamed 1 Regiment of Chevaulegers Lanciers de la Garde Impériale. 2nd Regiment of Lancers, raised in 1810 from former Dutch Army cavalry units as the 2 Regiment of Chevaulegers Lanciers de la Garde Impériale. The regiment became known as the Red Lancers from their uniform. 3rd Regiment of Lancers. The Regiment of Lithuanian Lancers was raised as the 3 Regiment of Chevaulegers Lanciers de la Garde Impériale in Lithuania during the invasion of Russia in 1812, largely from the Lithuanian population in Poland, but was virtually destroyed in the retreat of the same year, and the survivors incorporated into 3 Regiment de Éclaireurs. Incorporated into the regiment was a squadron of Lithuanian Tatars as the Escadron de Lithuanian Tatars. Mamelukes. A squadron of Mamelukes returned with Napoleon from the Egyptian campaign in 1799. They were inducted into the Guard, and usually attached to the Chasseurs à Cheval. The squadron was never increased to a regiment in strength. Over the years their casualties were replaced from French cavalry regiments, or from any vaguely Middle Eastern-related nationalities. Elite gendarmes. Although technically classed as cavalry of the Guard, Légion de Gendarmerie d'élite troops invariably served in detachments with the General Staff of the Guard, Napoleon's personal headquarters, and the Guard field camps. The Legion included mounted and dismounted troops, the mounted component being 2 squadrons. Guards of Honor. The Guards of Honor were 4 regiments of light cavalry which Napoleon created in 1813 for his campaigns in Germany to reinforce his Guard cavalry decimated in Russia. The regiments were dressed in the fashion of the Hussars. They served alongside the other Guard cavalry, but were not technically part of the Old, Middle or Young Guard. Illustrations of cavalry regiments by Adolphe de Chesnel. Horse Grenadiers, Horse Artillery, Chasseurs à Cheval, Elite Gendarmes, Lancers, Mamelukes, Empresses. Dragoons, Éclaireurs. Artillery of the Guard. Artillery of the Guard included the Foot Artillery Regiment batteries, Horse Artillery Regiment batteries, the Artillery Train of the Guard and the Artillery Park of the Guard, the latter 2 created in 1807. Despite shortages in artillery ordnance, in 1813 Napoleon created the Regiment d'Artillerie à Pied de la Garde Impériale of the Young Guard. The Parc du Matériel de la Garde Impériale was created in 1813 to supplement the meagre resources of the Bataillon du Train des Équipages Militaires. After the losses of the 1812 campaign, Engineers of the Guard, although not deployed in combat as a unit, the Engineers, created in 1804 as the Engineers of the Consular Guard, participated in combat more so than the combat units of the Guard, which were usually held in reserve. By 1810 the chief engineer officer of the Guard had a company of Sappers de la Garde, all members of the Old Guard. In 1813 this was increased to 2 companies, and later 1 battalion of 4 companies totaling 400 sappers. The 1st and 2nd companies were classed as Old Guard, while the 3rd and 4th companies as the Young Guard. Sailors of the Guard, raised from sailors of the French Navy who had distinguished themselves, the battalion of Marins wore a distinctive, elaborate uniform resembling that of the Hussars. Their officers bore titles of rank derived from their seagoing compatriots. and the overall commander of the Marines bore the rank of Capitaine de Vaisseau. Their duties including manning boats and other watercraft used by the Emperor.